A lot of the times when we're going through really intense experiences or periods that we don't even know how to label, we don't understand what's going on. That's how it was for me, at least. Over 2 years of going through things that I had no idea what was going on. And I still can't say that I really understand a lot of it, aside from feeling a lot of really deep emotional releases and feeling many difficult emotions, what had seemingly been repressed. But throughout it all, the body didn't behave in, the normal ways that we are used to or that are acceptable in society. And at first, it was scary because I had no idea what was going on. Um, I thought something was wrong. But after, seeing that there was nothing that could be done, the body was just allowed to be how it was, however that was seemingly happening. Which, so many people aren't used to doing. A lot of times we try to suppress that and try to look normal. No, in my case, there wasn't any way of suppressing it. And the body could sometimes just move in, ways that don't seem like the normal ways of moving or expressing. What people call involuntary kriyas, for example, which are involuntary movements. Now I can't really, I guess, see those the same, since everything is seen to happen on its own. But, everything that was happening, that's just what was happening. There's no need to define it. It is what it is. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it was the body's way of going through what it needed to go through and coming to a place where it eventually felt safe to be able to be with more and more what was there, what was suppressed, what had been suppressed. It would seem that, looking back, that perhaps a lot of the ways in which the body appeared could be seen in a way as a defense mechanism of the ego, like through involuntary kriyas, or I don't know, having visual phenomena, a sort of avoidance of what was here. But that fell away on its own. There was nothing that, was done that I could say that, oh, I did this and then that fell away. Everything just happened. Um, Despite not understanding fully what was happening and even being really freaked out about things that I was experiencing that could be termed like supernatural. It's like more and more belief in that just fell away. And no matter how the body was acting, whether it was total fear and freezing, not being able to do anything for months and months, being completely incapacitated, well, that's just what it was. And so, it was like meeting the self, meeting myself, meeting the body exactly where it was, in that state of extreme fear and extreme pain, in which very intense emotions like rage, anger, deep pain, sadness, self hatred, so much that was arising, and just fully expressing it, like the full expression of that couldn't be contained. So there was lots of screaming and just fully feeling all of it, even though at times it felt like it would destroy the body because it was so intense. And so whatever your body is doing or needs to do, like, there's nothing wrong with it. I believe I was conditioned in the past to view being frozen, for example, as something negative, um, maybe something to even be ashamed of. But it makes sense that you would freeze, especially, being conditioned to believe that what you experience and what you express is wrong, which I believe we all are. We are taught that we have to appear happy, that these negative emotions must not be expressed because they're wrong, because they say something wrong about us that isn't acceptable by society. And so it makes sense that you would freeze. It makes sense that you wouldn't want to be in the body. You want to be in your thoughts and you'd want to escape. It's probably how you survive for most of your life. And so that'll take time to fall away. It'll take time for you to finally feel safe, feel that it's safe to be with the body, to just be with what's there, what's arising, and not feel the need to escape. It's not easy. Here it took like almost 3 years of not being able to do anything, being completely incapacitated, not being able to sit or lie down, just like leaning on my side on a couch, and pain and fear, extreme pain and fear, and not knowing if things would get any better. Things actually kept getting worse. Month after month, things just kept getting worse. And I was like, how? There was just not even knowing anymore what would happen. And towards the end, just not even believing in the thoughts that were arising, which some of them were like, even suicidal thoughts, because it was just such an extremely horrific way of living, not being able to do anything, being in extreme pain nonstop, that was just overwhelming, that would never subside, and having to take more and more medications that were damaging and that were increasingly not helping at all too. And yeah, it was just like, okay, well, there was more and more just trust in the body and what it was doing, what was there, what was arising, what was seemingly being gone through, being experienced. until it finally became safe to express what was there, like fully, without any barriers, to fully expressing everything and to just letting go. And it was only then, so after over 2.5 years, that I finally became able to start to do things again. But it wasn't like, oh wow, I did this. It was just seeing like, it was just a seeing that no one did this. This is, yeah, beyond words. There was never anyone that was separate. No one pulling the strings, making decisions. No one in control. And then also, it was seen that there was this finally, there was this choosing to um, listen to music and watch, certain movies that I had seen growing up and that I knew would bring up, or at least the thought came up that this would bring up a lot of emotional things, memories, and before that I hadn't been able to watch anything on TV for during that whole time, so like almost 3 years, or listen to music. And I don't know, specific movies were chosen, and there was even more of an emotional release that happened during them. Lots of crying, and it felt like it was really needed. And I can't say that like I chose to do that. I would have never predicted that that would even happen. More and more, things like that have continued to arise. Parts that were deeply wounded or repressed. Also, now that I have been getting back to everyday things again, there have been, impulses that impulses to act as I used to, because that's the way I was conditioned to. Like, for example, working hard at things. But then this time, just getting a clear signal from the body that no, we can't, I can't do this anymore, and that is actually harmful for the body. I remember I was sitting and I just started to feel the sensation across like my mouth, and I wasn't sure what it was, and it just felt like a lot of tension. And then I just started crying, and I didn't even expect it at all. But it felt like a huge tension was being released. And then I realized it's my body just doesn't want to work in the same way. It needs a lot of space for rest and to just be. Whatever that looks like.